everyone, and welcome to our Sustainable Activism webinar. My name is Lisa Levinson. I'm your host today for this webinar, and this is part of our offerings for our Sustainable Activism campaign. I'm the director of that campaign, and what we do is we provide emotional and spiritual tools for animal activists so that we can stay in this movement for the long haul and feel healthy and happy and be resilient in the face of animal abuse. So today we are very fortunate to have Ari Nessel join us, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him. So after an epiphany in 1997, Ari changed the way he related to food, and his heart opened up to the impact every person's life has on countless beings and on the world at large. And soon after this insight, he had a vision of himself attaining worldly goals and dreams, yet feeling empty inside. This led him to ground his life into practices such as mindfulness, compassionate eating, philanthropy, service, and transformational entrepreneurship. And his recent projects include hosting a 5-day silent meditation retreat for leaders in animal advocacy and a follow-up workshop, founding the Pollination Project, which has made over 2,500 seed grants of 500 to 5,000 in over 100 countries to passionate individual change makers working in areas such as environmental sustainability, social justice, and community health and wellness. So co-creating a retreat center in Marin County for Service Space, a 500,000 person strong volunteer-led service group that aims to ignite our fundamental generosity in ways that create both inner and outer transformation. So redeveloping thousands of apartment units such that they are carbon neutral, water efficient, and support the well-being of the staff who oversee them. Ari actively experiences the challenges of being a modern-day yogi and the delusion that life can be compartmentalized into separate boxes such as family, work, service, health, and spirit. He remains constantly challenged to live his life in alignment with his values and to utilize the numerous privileges he has been given to turn seeds into blossoms and blossoms into fruit. So I think many of us can relate to Ari and to these daily challenges, and how do we then find our way amidst all these challenges and find peace so that we can continue to help the animals. So it's my pleasure to introduce Ari Nessel. Hello, Ari.
Hello, Lisa. Greetings. Thanks for the introduction.
My pleasure.
It's a real honor to be able to be with fellow activists and advocates who are seeking to create more compassion in the world and in their own hearts, and expressing that goodness that is innate to all of us. So many of us forget. I really have seen the benefits of being an activist and being an advocate for those who are not acknowledged in the world. And I've also seen the challenges of having the eyes and the heart that can see the suffering in a society that oftentimes is indifferent or ignorant of what we are most likely aware of on this video cast. So for me, it's been really central to find practices that support that well-being within me so I can both be a more skillful advocate for animals, as you said, have more sustainability in my advocacy, and as well as to support my own well-being, because it seems to me that my life and my well-being are intimately related with that of those who I advocate for, and that how I show up is intimately related to how other people respond to me. And if I want to create peace in the world, then I need to cultivate peace. If I want to create more happiness and joy in the world, then I need to show up in a way that expresses my own happiness and joy. And so the question becomes for me is, how does one do that? How do we cultivate these qualities and do it in a way that is not delusional and ignorant of of the things around us. And so with that, I really want to open up with a story. Let me open up our PowerPoint here. So I guess as the opening, the name of this talk is Activist Tools for Equanimity. And equanimity, we'll go into a little bit more about what that is, but here's the definition. It says it's mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, even in difficult situations. So here, you can take a look at the screen and look at this picture as a prototype for equanimity. And it relates to a story I want to share with you. There once was a king who offered a prize to the artist who would paint the best picture of peace. Many artists tried. The king looked at all the pictures. There were only two he really liked, and he had to choose between them. One picture was of a calm lake. The lake was a perfect mirror for peaceful, towering mountains all around it. Overhead was a blue sky with fluffy white clouds. All who saw this picture thought it was a perfect picture of peace. The other picture, which is what we're looking at, had mountains too. These were rugged and bare. Above was an angry sky, from which rain fell and in which lightning played. Down the side of the mountain tumbled a foaming waterfall. This didn't look peaceful at all. But then when the king looked closely, he saw behind the waterfall a tiny bush growing in a crack in the rock. I don't know if you can see the bottom middle of the picture. I'll see the picture there. Right, the bird. In that bush, a mother bird had built her nest. There in the midst of the rush of angry water sat the mother bird on her nest in perfect peace. So which picture do you think won the prize? The king chose the second picture. And the reason he explained is because peace does not mean to be in a place where there is no noise, no trouble, no hard work. Rather, peace means to be in the midst of all those things and still be calm in your heart. This is the true meaning of peace. The peace that the king was referring to here is a certain kind of peace that is often referred to as equanimity. So equanimity is a very deep kind of peace. That first picture was this kind of peace we talked about where we're in a quiet space, there's no distractions, where the sun is, we're not too warm, not too cold, there's no difficult thoughts arising. It's sort of this place where we think we're getting what we want and not getting what we don't want. And we're not present to the difficulties of and hardships of life, either within or outside of us. And that is, when we can have that, it's a wonderful place to be. It is a joy to have that kind of peace. But that kind of peace is highly unreliable. The causes and conditions for it frequently aren't available. So what is more reliable is to cultivate an attitude of equanimity or a capacity for equanimity. And that capacity allows us to be like that bird in difficult circumstances and still feel a little like the woman in this picture who's sitting with their doorbell ringing and the barking dog and the phone ringing and still finding some sense of ease. And I would add, this picture doesn't need to be just a person sitting on, meditation. A person can be just, is walking, through a busy city, is engaging with an angry family member, or maybe is passing out leaflets and being attacked by someone who feels defensive about their requests that they consider eating plant-based foods, or any of those possibilities. So what is equanimity here? More another way of thinking about that. So we think of there's this idea of these 8 worldly winds. And those are often thought of as gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, and success and failure. See, these are like these diametrically opposed ideas, which we're trying to get more of the gain, praise, pleasure, and success, and less of the loss, blame, pain, and failure. And that's it. And we think that in some ways that when we get what we want, that's going to make us happier. But in some ways, it actually prepares us for more pain, because almost in some ways in that system of well-being, the higher we climb, the further we have to fall. So there's a quote I have here that it's really connected me to this practice to cultivate equanimity. And it's this well-known meditation teacher. He said, his name's Ajahn Chah. He said, there are two kinds of suffering. The kind that leads to more suffering, the kind that leads to the end of suffering. If we don't face the second, that's the kind that leads to the end of suffering, we will surely face the first. So as we think about equanimity in our support system for life, we see that there's a real powerful call to cultivate this as a source of our own well-being. It's also a remarkable resource for us as activists to have more capacity to face difficulty around us. I'd like to take a moment before we go more into this explanation of it to have a practice, to have a direct experience of a mindfulness which supports equanimity. This practice is called "What Are You Noticing Now?" So, just a request for those listening in or watching. I'd like you to close your eyes and close your eyes and notice your posture. So you're sitting erect. Your head above your shoulders and your shoulders above your seat. How is your breath? Deep, shallow, long, short. Are you breathing through your mouth? Or are you breathing through your nose? Can you feel your breath mostly in your chest or your belly? Where is it changing? Now I'm going to ask you a repeating question. I'm going to ask you, what are you noticing now? And your mics are off, so I'd like you to consider saying it out loud. I'm going to give you an example here. I'm going to say, I'm noticing now my inhale. I'm noticing now the sound of my voice. I'm noticing the sound of the rain falling outside. Noticing some air in my throat. Noticing my exhale. And the sound of my breath. So that's an example. And I'd like you to consider doing the same thing. And I will say, what are you noticing now? Then you say out loud, wherever you are, or inward if you're uncomfortable, if you're in a place that doesn't feel safe. Say it inwardly, what you're noticing. What are you noticing now? 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 Notice the same thing over and over. It may change, it may not. It doesn't have to be wise or glean insight. Just what's really most available in this moment. What are you noticing now? 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 Ready. Noticing your body and your posture again. Feeling your breath and wherever it is in the body. And opening your eyes. So, the practice that I found to support my ability to be present. And when I analyze it or investigate it, that this present moment is the only actually accessible moment of life. The past is a memory, and the future is actually just an anticipatory thought as well. That's my smell, my taste, my touch, my view, my cognition that's going on at this moment, thought this moment, those are all something that can be experienced only in this present moment. And that makes life a lot more accessible. It's the only way it's accessible, in fact. And so that brings up the question, because this is here to support activism. And so I ask the question, what does equanimity have to do with activism? And you're welcome to put on your screen if you have any answers about that, and I'll take a look at them. But for me, activism is one of the key ingredients to embolden our capacity to be an activist. So if we are non-reactive, if we can deal with the ups and downs of life, there is a different availability to be with suffering that we would otherwise not have. If we are highly reactive and we have a difficult time being with pain and suffering and hardship, then our capacity to be a true advocate for those who are in pain is minimized. We're afraid to interact with people who may say something mean because we feel brought down by it. We're afraid to view or bear witness to suffer to either by videos or in person the suffering of others. We have to extricate ourselves very quickly from situations that are difficult. And by nature, an activist is swimming against the stream. It's facing hardship. As an activist, we engage with some sort of friction in the world. And so this is a unique support system to be an effective advocate. And the truth is also for our own happiness, that if we don't have equanimity, we can get caught in a sense of giddiness, a sense of disconnect from our bodies that equanimity brings us back to. So I'll share a little bit about my experience of equanimity and how it's supported my life as it relates to animal advocacy. There you can see a little over a year and a half ago, I did some undercover investigation work with animal equality. And I visited some slaughterhouses and some confined animal feeding operations in Mexico. Here's a picture of me walking through a battery cage egg-producing farm in Guadalajara. And I will say that walking through there, I directly felt the the amplification of pain I've never felt in my life before. To see thousands, tens of thousands. In fact, there's 200,000 chickens at this facility, kept in cages that they can barely move in. They're knowing they've been there for 2 years, and that I could see not only dead chickens in there, but I could see cages that had fewer chickens than others, which I was explained by another activist there that meant other hens had died in their place, and that's why some hens had more room, because they had outlived those who died from suffering. And you can walk through here and feel the fear of these animals. And I also took video of animals being brought to slaughter. This is a cow, an animal I totally connect to. That I could see its eyes and see our shared capacity for joy and for pain. And I'm watching this animal that I want to save so much, that I care so much about, being killed. And I had to figure out, how can I be there and not be reactive? How can I be in this place where I want to just, where I want to totally stop this system of oppression and not cry and break down, or not get supercharged and angry at the people there and blow our cover as we're trying to get important information, capture this information for this investigation? How can I see 100,000, tens of thousands of chickens, baby chickens there, and not get overwhelmed by that, but really, even for just the one, feel empathy and feel a sense of connection and feel love? Like I did this one chick here, who was crying out for its mother. We didn't have all the resources and the privileges that I have, and practically had none of them at all. But how do I cultivate that ability to be with those as an activist, as an advocate, and still have an open heart, but not get caught in that sorrow that comes from this pain? The practice of equanimity has been that support system for me. And it is an enormous support system for those who can cultivate it. There is a difference between unpleasant conditions and objecting to them. And so I was able to be with these unpleasant conditions, fully available, capture them as they were, even though I would want them to be otherwise in the future. I knew this is how they were now. And to fight what was to be like fighting gravity. And so this capacity, this quality of equanimity, it creates a presence that allows the mind to flower with wisdom and a steadiness. Without it, I would easily fall into anxiety and worry. And even my capacity to be generous would be limited. It really allowed me to confront the worst in humans in a way without hating humans for it, because I could see it allowed me to see the impersonal. It allows me to see the impersonal nature of existence without blaming others for what I'm feeling. So with that, I'd like to try a second practice that helps support equanimity that I learned from a friend who's a Buddhist monk who actually is an advocate for animals as well. And this is he calls this 10 by 10. And as the caption shows there, it says, breathe in slowly, gently, deeply, then breathe out. And so once more, I'm going to have an invitation for you to close your eyes and to feel into this practice of this breathing, this 10 breaths. It's a simple exercise we can do every day. And we were just looking for 10 moments during our day when we can, this is something, again, we're doing it now, but you can hopefully repeat this. It just takes 2 minutes. We are where we walk. We can do this before meals or waking. I'll take you more through the opportunities for it in a moment. But closing your eyes trying to breathe continuously without pause and interruption. So you notice your breath sometimes on inhale pauses at the top, or on exhale it takes a moment to inhale. So just almost switching immediately from inhale to exhale. And breathing not just continuously but silently. No noise. So calm. So you have to do that, there's a calming of the breath a little. And you want to make the breath a little more soft. Not like a pushing, not a forcing of the breath, not pushing out or pulling the air in. Beautiful thing about breathing, you don't have to do it purposefully. The body just breathes. You don't have to try to breathe. Breathing happens. But we can adjust the breath. And one way we might want to work on here is noticing, is your breath longer on the inhale or the exhale? And if one's a lot longer than the other, maybe trying to balance them out a little. Then paying attention to the depth of your breath. You're breathing in from the top of your chest or more the diaphragm around the belly. The invitation is to breathe more towards the belly, utilizing the bottom 2/3 of our lungs. So to repeat and summarize as I lead you through this, we're looking to breathe continuously, without pause and interruption, silently, without noise, softly, without pushing or pulling, evenly, without favoring inhale or exhale, and deeply towards the bottom 2/3 of our lungs into our belly. I'm going to do 10 breaths like this, and I'll just count. And if your breath takes longer or shorter, just go at your own speed. Just some way to help guide us to where we are as a group, or whenever you're listening to this. So inhaling slowly, softly, continuously. Exhaling. 1. Inhaling. Exhaling. 2. Inhaling. Exhaling. 3. Inhaling. Exhaling. 4. Inhaling. Exhaling. 5. Inhaling. Exhaling. 6. Inhaling. Exhaling. 7. Inhaling. Exhaling. 8. Inhaling. Exhaling. 9. Inhaling. And exhaling. 10. Open your eyes now. So this practice helps train our breath. You can use it to develop more focused attention, and it helps gain a little more peace and clarity throughout your day. One of the misnomers about mindfulness is that it's something or that it requires meditation. And this is a practice that can be just, you don't have, it's not necessarily a meditation. You can do it throughout your day. You don't have to go and sit in cross-legged lotus position on a cushion with no distractions. You can do this when you get into your car in the morning, when you first wake up, before you make a phone call, before you eat, before you go to sleep. Anytime you are longing for a little more peace and clarity. And if you can do this many times throughout your day, it really resets your mind very deeply, in my experience, and without much effort. We're talking about 2 minutes. So with that practice also inclines to something called mindfulness, just like the first one. So I wanted to share a little bit about mindfulness because it's such a key component and reliable support system for equanimity. So mindfulness is sometimes defined as being present in a non-objecting way. Sometimes it's referred to as non-judgmental awareness or being aware of the present moment. By the way, I love this cartoon, if you can see it. It says, person's at a megaphone. It says, he's obviously an activist monk. And he says, what do we want? They yell, mindfulness. When do we want it? Now. And it's just ironic that there's like this yelling of it because it's always accessible to us. It's not something we have to ask anyone for. There's no one holding us back from being mindful. Mindful is always in our hands. It's a choice that we hold. It's just being present to what's available right now. And so there's this idea sometimes, I guess that being present is difficult. In fact, we're always present to some degree. What we hear can only be heard in this moment. You can't hear the past. You can't hear the future. Our smell is only what's happening, what we're smelling right now. What we're seeing is only what we're seeing this very moment. All these senses are all very present. The only sense that isn't present, and I consider as a sense, and so does the most Eastern spiritual practices, is our thinking. We're just trying to align our thoughts with the direct experience of our nose, our mouth, our skin, our eyes, and I think I missed one, and our tongue, and our nose. I think I said some of those a couple times. Sorry about that. So it's simple, as many would say, mindfulness, but it's not easy. It's something you have to constantly come back to. And when you're not mindful, when you're not present, mindfulness just brings you back. And so if you notice right now you weren't mindful, then you are being mindful because you noticed that you weren't mindful. It's this beautiful way to bring us back now, and that brings us to remember where we just were as well. So there's also a lot of, so I talked about equanimity, but I also want to speak a little bit here about the science of mindfulness, because while it is viewed as maybe an Eastern practice or New Age practice or different practices, it's really much supported by science. It's practiced in business programs now. It's practiced in nonprofits, and of course in spiritual centers. So one of the interesting things about mindfulness is now it's being studied is that it shows that it is one of the more reliable components to impact our divergent thinking and creativity. So we tend to have this brain meld with people around us, and by quieting our mind or being more mindful, we'll say, we're likely to generate more ideas. In fact, one of the things I've noticed by studying mindfulness is something called brain elasticity, which is really interesting. It means that our brain we can change and mold our brain at any age. We think that it's only the first years of life and we become fixed as our personality type, our tendencies of mind, and it's not at all. They've shown that a practice of mindfulness, with it, we have not only change our brain's response to experience, but it activates something called the rest and digest part of the nervous system that helps with stress management. And they found that some of these, after just 11 hours of practice of mindfulness and meditation, that people actually have a structural change in their brain around the areas that control focus and choice, or how we respond. And people were able to stay on task longer and made fewer switches. It also helps with anxiety. There's been 163 studies that suggest mindfulness has an overall positive effect on improving anxiety. On relationships, they showed that married couples who practice mindfulness have improved their marital quality and communications, and that's because of the greater self-awareness they've been able to cultivate, which allows them to accept one another as they are. And in work, it's been phenomenally successful in helping communication, increasing people's ability to address conflict skillfully and to respond to situations at hand rather than reaching out of habit, improving people's ability to harness and improve the quality of their own attention. And this calm demeanor often rubs off on those you work with. So it's a gift not just to ourselves, but to people around us and the people we love. And of course, it increases our ability to listen to what other people are saying. If we're not mindful, we have a tendency to not pay attention to what people are saying to us, but just pay attention to our own thoughts. So here's a list I'd like to share with you of just some meditation practices and mindfulness practices you can do on your own. One is downloading an app, which is very helpful. We talked about this 10 by 10 breathing. Of course, single tasking is so valuable. Not rushing is the biggest killer of equanimity. You can find a local meditation group. You can practice it while you're eating. Just having a journal every night, super valuable. Just reflecting on your day. And you can include in that a practice of gratitude. And if you really want to take it further, going on a meditation retreat is also extremely valuable to go much more deeper into this practice. We're going to have an opportunity for questions and answers now. But before I do that, I'd just like to read a quote from a friend of mine. His name's Pancho. This is a picture of him at a protest of sorts. And he was meditating to help calm the people around him where things were getting really amped up. This is what he said, and you can see there, just totally equanimous as he's being arrested by the police for disturbing the peace, ironically. And this is what Pancho says. He said that sometimes the most radical thing to do in a polluted, violence-based system is to be still. The mud settles to the bottom, and we have a clearer vision about our next steps. For example, facilitating the growth of the communities we want to live in, or realizing the most efficient tools against a system based on greed, fear, hurry, and violence, or generosity, courage, slowing down, and loving kindness. So with that, I would like to open up the call or the video for any questions you may have.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Ari, for that presentation. I especially appreciated the experiential pieces of it. And this is Lisa. I'm the host of the webinar, which is our Sustainable Activism webinar for In Defense of Animals. And many folks are tuning in on our Facebook page. Thanks to everyone who's joined us, and also some people who are participating in the webinar. And if anyone has a question, you can, if you're on the phone with us, you can press *4 and ask your question, or you can type it into the chat box if you're with us on the computer. Another way to do it is to just turn on your camera and to ask with your audio. You can turn on your audio by clicking on the icon. And if you're with us on Facebook Live, then type your question into the chat box. Be monitoring those things, and thanks to Ari for answering a couple questions for us.
And I neglected to tell people at the beginning that I'd be asking questions to open that space for you, so I apologize.
That is fine. Let's see if we have any questions on our Facebook page. I know in the chat box, somebody had mentioned that some of these techniques that you're sharing might be helpful in situations like when they see a transport truck that's going by, and how not to hyperventilate and feel as though they want to do some action in that moment to like cause possibly harm to themselves in the efforts to save the animals.
Yeah, I think these practices are almost always appropriate. Not as, you want to be careful to not use them as a way to like step out of our pain. So there's a way, if it becomes unmanageable, our suffering, then this is a perfect practice. And it's not meant as a way to check out of our experience. When our capacity, when the stimulus exceeds our capacity, this is a perfect practice. Mindfulness is always valuable, but these 10 by 10 practices I was referring to, taking 10 breaths, closing your eyes, do you need to that for self-care? Yes, always. And also we can be aware of the pain we're feeling and notice that. When the things get really difficult, where am I feeling in my body? Where's the pain? Can I feel? Usually there's a physical experience of pain. I'm noticing tension in my head, my neck. There's heat, there's warmth maybe. You can notice your body numbing out. I can't even feel my body. And just by doing that, grounding your emotional experience into a physical experience, it makes our experience of the difficulties of life much more tolerable, much more accessible in ways that our mind can just sort of amplify otherwise.
Thank you so much for helping to give us some guidance on what to do in those moments, because many of us have them. They might be slightly different for each of us, but what do we do when we see the trucks, when we experience animal abuse firsthand or even secondhand via images that we see online? And we did have one question about using these skills in a way to cope with maybe depression, other types of mental health issues that might come up.
Yeah. So it's not meant to supplant, treating depression. I would say, like it's another resource. I think there's a lot of people who have gone off meds because of these practices, but I would encourage people to use this as an additional tool to help deal with their depression or anxiety or other mental health issues that may arise. So there's a lot of people who practice these for years and still suffer from those, but their relationship to their suffering of depression or anxiety is greatly changed. They can be with it in a way they couldn't before, where they can be in the world with it and be able to talk to people and engage and not be in bed. Other people, it actually their depression or the anxiety actually goes away. So it's a great support mechanism, as I've seen. Not a panacea necessarily for everyone, but a wonderful support tool.
I have another question here. Do you recommend that animal activists watch films that include abject animal suffering?
So I would say you have to check in with yourself. Sometimes I watch those to remind myself of what I am advocating for. It's really easy. We're so far removed from the suffering in the world. We live in this very sanitized experience. And sometimes I want to reconnect to my heart or reconnect to this difficulty out there. But at the same time, some people, that is something that they don't have, as I talked about before, a capacity to handle. Or in some ways, it makes them a little more stoic. It actually they have to close down to do that, and their heart becomes covered with plaque, or they get angry as a result of it. So I think you have to check in with yourself for what your motivation is for watching them. I think they are valuable for some people, but it's relative to what your motivation is for watching them, and if that supports that motivation.
Thank you. And we have another question. Let's see. Anything in particular that you recommend to say to oneself when doing the breathing?
Yes, it's not saying it's not like an affirmation. It's more like you can say to yourself, breathing in, I am breathing in, and I am breathing out. I am breathing deeply. I am breathing softly. So maybe sort of you can incline the breath in a certain way, or actually just notice what the breath is doing. You might be breathing in short breath. You might be breathing in a shallow breath. So the best way to align your breath with your words is through mindfulness, noticing what your breath is like. And actually saying it out loud will help you not have your mind become distracted during the activity.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. We're also getting some positive comments saying that was an outstanding answer. Other people who have mentioned that they really admire your work. I wanted to share with you that feedback and to thank you. I think that's covered most of the questions that I read. And yes, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to answer a few of these questions and for really addressing them in detail.
Well, it's a great joy that I get to share these practices with other people that have supported my life so much. And so let's end with a minute of gratitude. Gratitude for, maybe closing your eyes again and feeling a sense of gratitude for your health, for other activists who care just like you for making the world a better place, for reducing suffering, for the unique gifts we've been given in our life to be of service to others, of all those people who came before us and who made it possible for us to build our own resources, to advocate for our own well-being that we may have, and even maybe a little gratitude for the difficulties we've had in our path that help us grow and become wiser and more compassionate.
Thank you, Ari. Such a perfect ending to a wonderful webinar with so many tools. I so appreciate the experiential tools, and we like to recommend these webinars, even watching the replays, to people who call us on our support line. For those of you who don't know, we have an animal activist support line where you can call and ask questions if you have any concerns, if you want to practice the mindfulness tools, and you can find us at 800-705-0425 or idausa.org/activist support. And I'll take a little moment just to mention that because of Ari's inspiration and also assistance, we're going to be hosting a mindfulness and self-care retreat for animal activists in the Bay Area. So stay tuned. We'll be announcing all of the details. And then you can practice in an environment for the weekend and have an opportunity to really embody some of these skills and tools.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.